Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks. Let's start this packed Wednesday with the top headlines of the hour. Iran unveils a new surface-to-surface missile with a range of 1,450 kilometers, just one day after Tehran and Washington resume indirect talks to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal. Ukraine says a European diplomatic push aimed at averting a feared Russian invasion is working, but that the situation remains tense. Pope Francis says that war over Ukraine would be madness and hopes that tensions with Russia can be overcome through multilateral dialogue. Protests break out inside and outside the Slovak parliament as tempers rise over the country's defense deal with Washington. It allows US forces to use Slovak air bases. In a warning against complacency in following COVID-19 protocols, the World Health Organization warns that Omicron will not be the last COVID variant and says the next one may be even more transmissible. And British superstar Adele takes home 3 gongs, including the coveted Album of the Year at the Brit Awards, during a ceremony that did away with gender-specific categories for the first time.
Artist, I do so much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're a recipient of the Critics' Choice Award. In 2000.
The world has seen 3 days of shuttle diplomacy by French President Emmanuel Macron. He first met the Russian president in the Kremlin, then the president of Ukraine in Kiev, and now other European leaders. Macron holding back-to-back meetings today with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Polish President Andrzej Duda to discuss the Ukraine crisis. The leaders of Germany, France and Poland met to try and de-escalate tensions over Russia's military build-up on its border with Ukraine. The European leaders were united in their message that the continent's goal is to prevent war. Polish President Duda noting that this has been the most difficult situation Europe has faced since the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.
Et nous allons continuer d'agir dans les semaines qui viennent, avec des objectifs simples. Le premier, ça a été dit, éviter la guerre. La paix et la stabilité du continent européen sont notre trésor, et nous considérons que notre devoir est de tout faire pour le préserver. La deuxième chose, c'est consolider et défendre à chaque instant l'unité des Européens et des Alliés.
Unser Austausch zu diesem Zeitpunkt wird daher ganz besonders gewinnbringend sein, denn uns alle eint ein Ziel, den Frieden in Europa zu erhalten, durch Diplomatie und durch klare Botschaften und die gemeinsame Bereitschaft, einig zu handeln.
The focus now switches to separate talks involving high-ranking officials in Berlin on Thursday. Ukraine hopes that this meeting would pave the way for another Normandy format summit with the leaders of Russia, France and Germany. The 4-way Normandy talks aim to revive the stalled peace plan for Kiev's conflict with Moscow-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Russia wants Ukraine to offer concessions to the Russian-backed rebels who have been fighting Kiev since 2014, a conflict that has claimed over 13,000 lives to date. But President Volodymyr Zelensky has laid out 3 red lines that he says cannot be crossed in the quest for a solution. One is no compromise to Ukraine's territorial integrity. The second, no direct talks with the separatists. And finally, no interference in Ukraine's foreign policy. Meanwhile, the White House says the US will welcome diplomatic progress, but will only believe it when US officials see it.
The president spoke with President Macron twice over the last week, including on Sunday, the day before he spoke with President Putin, and I expect he'll speak with him soon again. But it's also important to note that there are others. The German Chancellor, who was just here yesterday, is also meeting with President Putin tomorrow. And certainly, if there is diplomatic progress, we would welcome that. But we will believe it when we see it with our own eyes at the border.
So Ukraine remains the focus of intensive diplomatic activity to try and head off a potential conflict. WION's executive editor, Palki Sharma Upadhyay, is in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, bringing us ground reports, minute-to-minute updates and voices from there. And she sent us this report on President Macron's visit to Kiev and the White House response to the talks.
The Americans have made an interesting statement. We heard from Jen Psaki, the spokesperson of the White House, and she said that while we welcome all of these diplomatic efforts, we are going to believe it only when we see it for ourselves. What does that tell you? That Americans want to be in charge, and they will not believe if their European partners say that progress is being made. Americans will confirm it when they see it for themselves. That is the statement coming from the White House. We've also seen some interesting statements from Paris. A French minister saying that Europe does not want to be drawn into Joe Biden's war, and if he wants to cancel Nord Stream 2, it should not be incumbent upon Europe and European powers to follow suit. So first we heard the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, or rather did not hear him making any commitment on Nord Stream 2, and now a French minister coming out and saying all of this. The Americans continue to say that there is no saying what Putin does. We do not trust the way the situation is developing, and we cannot say for sure when he is going to act and what he's going to do, but we have kept all options open. So that is the statement coming from America. They're doing their own diplomatic push at the same time, asking American citizens to evacuate Ukraine unless they're diplomats, and that is sending out a rather strong message.
US President Joe Biden has picked his choice to be the new commander of Central Command. Lieutenant General Michael Kurilla will head one of America's unified combatant commands in charge of military operations with allies. The Senate Armed Services Committee held a hearing on his nomination yesterday. He warned that al-Qaeda and ISIS are reconstituting in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, and told the Senate Armed Services Committee that the threat from a reconstituted al-Qaeda in Afghanistan remains a big challenge. But he assured the senators that if confirmed, he will look closely at options to ensure both ISIS-K and al-Qaeda are unable to threaten the US and its interests.
We do not have the capability yet. Additionally, we have the humanitarian crisis. The area is home to 9 of the top 10 most dangerous violent extremist organizations, including al-Qaeda and ISIS, which are both reconstituting. All of these ill trends are accelerated by water scarcity and food insecurity. China has significantly increased its investment and influence in the region, and Russia acts as a spoiler. If confirmed as the CENTCOM commander, I will protect American interests in the region with these challenges in mind.
Since US troops left Afghanistan after 2 decades of war, ISIS has stepped up its attacks in the country, and Kurilla's concerns echo the latest report published by the United Nations Security Council on the activities of ISIS and al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. The new UN report reveals that foreign terror groups enjoy more freedom in Afghanistan than in recent years, and specifically details the activities of al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent and the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. WION's correspondent in New York, Susan Tehrani, has more details.
President Biden's pick to be commander of CENTCOM admitted on Tuesday during a Senate confirmation hearing that monitoring the activities of terrorists in Afghanistan with over-the-horizon capabilities has proven to be difficult, although not impossible. Lieutenant General Michael Kurilla, if confirmed, would oversee continuing operations of Islamic State terrorist groups in Iraq and Syria. But he would also be in charge of monitoring and containing the ISIS Afghan affiliates like ISIS-K, also known as ISIS Khorasan, and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, using those over-the-horizon capabilities. He also warned of a threat to the American homeland by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, saying that while the aspiration is there, they still don't yet have the capabilities, at least as of now. He also reminded his audience that the Taliban in Afghanistan has yet to renounce Al-Qaeda. However, he did say that he would consider a case-by-case intelligence sharing operation with the Taliban if it would provide to be fruitful in targeting ISIS-K, which at least on the surface is a group that is considered a common enemy.
5 months after the chaotic evacuation of US troops from Afghanistan, testimonies from multiple commanders involved in the operation on the ground have been released to the public. Details from the final days of the evacuation have come to light, covering almost everything from the planning of the evacuation to the life and death decisions made daily by US soldiers at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The report also went into detail about the August 26th suicide attack at the airport that killed 13 US service members and up to 170 Afghans. According to the 82nd Airborne Division's commander, Sergeant Major David Pitt, the Marines guarding Abbey Gate were horribly exposed, and with the US having to partner with other countries, all running their own evacuations, it became extremely difficult to coordinate over security. Pitt further said that it was clear to those on the ground that there was a high probability that an attack was coming. The report revealed that unlike the north and west gates of the airport, that both had methodical checking systems and a minimised area of exposure, the Abbey Gate was just a large parking lot full of people. There were people sitting inside the checkpoint for days, just waiting for entry. The presence of other countries too meant that effectively everyone was responsible for security, not just the US Marines. CENTCOM's investigation further noted that one reason the Marines were so exposed was that they had focused on getting as many people as possible through Abbey Gate, while US forces had wanted to close the gate on the evening of August the 25th. British forces requested that the gate stay open since they had yet to complete their own evacuation. It was then decided that Abbey Gate would remain open until 9 o'clock in the morning on August the 27th. Investigators concluded that closing Abbey Gate earlier would have isolated British forces and could have led to conflict with the Taliban. CENTCOM's report also outlines that senior White House and State Department officials failed to grasp the Taliban's advance on Kabul and resisted efforts by US military leaders to evacuate US embassy personnel and Afghan allies weeks before the fall of the capital. This delay ultimately placed American troops in greater danger. The investigation provides the fullest account yet of the evacuation operation, which spanned 17 days and became one of President Biden's defining moments in office. WION's correspondent Anas Malik was reporting from Kabul, of course, throughout the Taliban takeover and the chaos, and he has sent us this report from Islamabad.
By all means, it's a reiteration of what we had been reporting, that the evacuation was ill-planned, it was hazy, and that the security measures were not up to speed, were not optimum, contrary to how it should have been. The fact that the takeover of the Taliban was so swift that it took everybody off guard, it took everybody by surprise, and then everybody, be that be the American forces, be that be the British Allied forces, or be that be others, they had just scrambled to get their things things done. But it sheds light on the most important aspect of the fact that how horribly or horridly the Marines were exposed to this, to the traffic, the oncoming people at the Abbey Gate, for the fact that Abbey Gate was the closest in proximity from the Hamid Karzai International Airport's civilian side towards the Abbey Gate, because Abbey Gate is the entrance towards the military side. Now, it goes on to further shed light on how hasty was the evacuation. But one thing that has to be kept in mind is the fact that the U.S. authorities itself cannot be kept aside from this evacuation, to the point that U.S. diplomats were oblivious that on the 15th of August, when the Taliban were taking over Afghanistan, the U.S. embassy had put out an inspection of a tender notice that was basically to construct a road from its embassy compound to Masood Circle, which was a kilometer and a half. So that actually goes on to show that nobody saw it coming, and it is easier to say that other troops would have been compromised, but it might just well be said that their own internal planning was not up to the mark either.
In environmental news today, there is growing concern in the United Arab Emirates, where scores of turtles are dying from eating plastics and other debris. A majority of the dead turtles in the area consumed marine plastic, highlighting the consequences of throwaway plastic around the world and in the UAE.
An adolescent turtle washed up on a beach at the United Arab Emirates east coast. A gloomy reality of the suffering by marine animals. A few meters from the turtle carcasses, plastic bags, packages, bottle caps strewn across the shore.
Normally this area, what's the problem causing the turtle is mainly the boat strikes and ingestion of the plastic or foreign material and entanglement with a fishing net or a discarded net in the wild. So normally the locals or the tourists, they found in the beaches to entangle with the net and debris. Then they will call us and we will immediately rush to the site and we will rescue the turtle.
Other turtles injured by boats or plastic pollution often need their flippers to be amputated. Once unspoiled, the nearby coast of mangrove trees is now fouled by piles of trash dragged from nearby landfills. A marine expert is examining some 200 turtles as part of his first research on the subject from the Middle East.
In our most recent study, we evaluated the marine debris ingested by green and loggerhead sea turtles from the eastern coast of the Sharjah Emirate in the United Arab Emirates. We found that marine debris was observed in 75% of green sea turtles and upward of 55% of loggerhead sea turtles.
Turtles may have survived the mass extinction that killed off dinosaurs millions of years ago. But today, they're disappearing around the world. Massive quantities of litter pollute the world's environment, with a seminal study in Science Advances 5 years ago estimating that 12 billion metric tons will pile up by 2050. Plastic pollution is just one of the threats that humans have created for sea turtles, along with rising sea temperatures that bleach coral reefs, coastal overdevelopment, and overfishing. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Finally today, the Oscar nominations are out as filmmakers, cast and crew await their opportunity to claim Oscar's glory. We're going to leave you with the nominations today. I'm Simon Marks. This has been WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.
The Power of the Dog.
Netflix could be on its way to making Oscar history. Its dark western, The Power of the Dog, led the pack with 12 Academy Award nominations Tuesday, including for Best Picture, providing Netflix with another chance to win the top prize and become the first streaming service ever to do so. Stars Benedict Cumberbatch and real-life couple Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons were among those who received acting nominations.
You are marvelous, Rose.
while Jane Campion became the first woman nominated twice for Best Director, having been a contender back in 1993 for The Piano. She lost then to Steven Spielberg, who she'll face again as he received a Best Director nod for his lavish remake of West Side Story. That film is also up for Best Picture, along with sci-fi epic Dune, which scored a second best 10 nominations, Kenneth Branagh's semi-autobiographical Belfast, King Richard, about the father of tennis legends Venus and Serena Williams.
Venus and Serena gonna shake up this world.
And the comedic climate change allegory, Don't Look Up. Streamer Apple TV Plus scored its first Best Picture nod for Coda, the story of a hearing woman in a deaf family, in a category with 10 nominees in all. The strong showing by streamers including Netflix, which nabbed a total of 27 nominations, further upends the traditional studio model. The Academy Awards will be broadcast live March 27th.
This is right, Arab.